You know this moment. It is late in the evening, the day is finally quiet, and you tell yourself you will only check your phone for 5 minutes before going to sleep. Just 5 minutes. A few messages, a few videos, a little escape after a long day. Then you look up. It is 1:12 a.m., your mind feels crowded, your sleep is already ruined, and tomorrow morning, the morning you promised would be different, has quietly been sacrificed again. And somewhere inside you, a familiar question appears. Why do I keep doing this? And the strange thing is, you already know the habit makes your life worse, yet tomorrow night the same moment will probably happen again. Maybe for you, it is not your phone. Maybe it is junk food late at night, nicotine during stressful moments, procrastination when important work appears, or that one behavior you promised yourself you would finally leave behind this year. You already understand the consequences. You already know it is hurting you. So why does knowing rarely lead to change? Because most people try to break a bad habit at the final moment. The moment of temptation, the moment of craving, the moment when the behavior is already about to happen. But the Japanese approach to discipline looks somewhere else. What if the habit is not winning because it is powerful, but because your life has quietly been arranged to make it easy? And once you see the one tiny change that breaks this pattern, you realize something uncomfortable. Most bad habits were never as strong as they felt. The method you're about to see may look almost too small to matter. Yet this idea, small structural change instead of dramatic effort, appears again and again in Japanese philosophy and long-term mastery. It is not about motivation. It is not about heroic discipline. It is about something far more practical. And once you see it, you stop fighting the wrong battle. Chapter 1: The Ritual Before the Habit. Daniel was 31 years old, intelligent and capable, the kind of person who understood productivity and psychology well enough to explain habits to other people, yet still found himself trapped inside the same patterns. He worked remotely, spending most of his day inside screens, emails, meetings, documents, and messages that never seemed to end. Not physically exhausting, but mentally relentless. Every night he made the same quiet promise. Tonight, I'll sleep earlier. Tonight, I'll stop scrolling. Tonight, I'll reset. And every night, the same sequence unfolded. Laptop closed, kitchen light off, one last glance at the phone. He sat on the edge of the bed, leaned back for a moment, opened one app almost without thinking, and somewhere in that small gap between intention and action, the algorithm took control. An hour disappeared, sometimes 2. The next morning, he woke up tired and already behind the version of the day he had imagined, so he relied on stimulation. More caffeine, more distractions, more mental escape. By night, his brain once again needed relief. This is what most people misunderstand about bad habits. A bad habit is rarely an isolated action. It is usually the final step in a chain that prepared the moment long before the behavior appeared. Daniel believed his problem was scrolling, but it wasn't. The real problem was the ritual before it: mental exhaustion, the phone within reach, the body already in bed, lights off, and no friction between impulse and action. The habit did not begin when he opened the app. It began when he entered the environment that made the app inevitable. Because if the environment starts the habit, then the habit was never really in control. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Why do intelligent people keep trying to solve this with force? Chapter 2: The Error of Willpower. A week later, Daniel visited an older family friend named Kenji, who had spent decades studying behavioral psychology in Tokyo and later worked as a performance coach. Daniel explained everything: the late nights, the wasted mornings, the frustration of understanding the habit yet repeating it anyway. Kenji listened quietly. Then he asked a simple question: "Where is your phone when you sleep?" Daniel frowned. "Next to me." Kenji nodded slowly. Then your habit is not digital, he said. It is architectural. Daniel laughed slightly. Kenji didn't. You keep trying to be stronger than your environment, he said. That is why you keep losing. Most people approach habit change like a test of character. They wait for the urge and try to overpower it. But by the time the urge appears, the environment has already done most of the work. The Japanese approach begins differently. Not with force, with design. Not how do I stop myself, but how do I make the old pattern harder to enter? Kenji gave Daniel a task so small it felt almost insulting. That night, he should not try to quit scrolling. He should simply charge his phone in another room. That was it. One small physical change. Daniel almost dismissed it because it sounded too small. But small changes are not weak. They are precise. And bad habits hate precision. Chapter 3. Ma, the space that changes everything. The first night felt strange. Daniel walked into the bedroom and reached automatically toward the bedside table, except the phone was not there. His hand paused in the air. In that quiet moment, something new appeared. Space. In Japanese philosophy, this space is called ma, the meaningful gap between things. In behavior, it becomes the space between impulse and action. Most habits survive because this space does not exist. Cue, motion, reward. And the loop moves so fast that most people never even notice it happening. People interpret this loop as lack of discipline, but often the problem is simply the absence of interruption. Kenji's second instruction arrived the next day. When you enter your bedroom, he said, place a book on your pillow. Daniel looked confused. I don't really read much. That's fine, Kenji replied. You are not trying to read a chapter. You are creating a new first move. Phone outside, book on the pillow. Within 10 days, Daniel slept earlier, not perfectly, but consistently enough to feel the difference. More sleep improved his mornings, better mornings improved his energy, and better energy meant he needed less escape at night. That is how real change works. One structural shift quietly alters several behaviors. But then something happened that ruins most habit changes. Chapter 4. The First Return. 3 weeks later, Daniel had a brutal day. Deadlines collapsed. A client changed direction. And by evening, his mind felt crowded and exhausted. That night, he brought the phone back into the bedroom, just for tonight. And he already knew how that sentence usually ends. Within minutes, the old loop returned. The next morning, frustration appeared. Most people think the damage comes from the slip. Usually, it comes from the story that follows it. I ruined everything. I'm back at zero. Kenji rejected that thinking immediately. You are not at zero, he said. You are at a test. A person who depends on perfection is still controlled by the habit. A person who knows how to return is becoming free. This is where another Japanese idea enters. Wabi-sabi. Progress is imperfect. You are not building a flawless self. You are building a self that can recover without collapse. So Daniel returned to the system. Phone outside, book on pillow. No speeches, just return. Because repetition builds behavior, but return builds identity. Chapter 5. Gambaru and Identity. After 2 months, Daniel was not dramatically transformed. He was something better. Stable. He slept better, woke clearer, and noticed the urge still appeared, but it no longer carried authority. Most people wait for the urge to disappear before believing they have changed. Real change begins earlier. It begins when the urge appears and no longer decides who you are. In Japanese culture, this persistence has a name, Gambaru, continuing even when motivation fades. Daniel stopped saying, I'm trying to stop scrolling. He simply became someone who protects his mind before sleep. That small shift is the moment a habit begins to lose its home. If you want to break a bad habit, do not start with the habit itself. Start with the doorway that leads to it. Change one physical detail that interrupts the sequence. Add one replacement action so small it feels trivial, and allow the system to reshape the behavior over time. Most habits are not defeated by force. They disappear when the path that feeds them stops being automatic. So tonight, before the urge even arrives, change the doorway.